Whether it is a relation with the West or the East, what is primarily important is what we ourselves as long as are satisfied with.
Whether it is relations with the West or the East, what matters most is what satisfies us. We don't need to please the West. We don't need to please the East. We must please ourselves. That sentence captures the moment. An Iranian defense minister declares Africa central to his country's security strategy. A Burkina Faso delegation responds with language rooted in sovereignty, resistance, and strategic autonomy. To some observers, it looked like routine diplomacy. To others, it triggered alarm bells. But for many young Africans watching closely, it felt like something else, a signal. Because Iran is not neutral in the global system. It is a state shaped by sanctions, nuclear tensions, financial isolation, and decades of confrontation with Western powers. So when Burkina Faso deepens defense discussions with Tehran, the real question is not whether it is controversial. The real question is, why now? Is this a reckless alignment in a fragile region? Or is the Sahel learning how to negotiate power in a world that is no longer controlled by one center alone? To understand the significance, we must first understand what Iran represents globally. Iran has operated for decades under pressure from the United States and Europe. The nuclear dispute, the 2015 JCPOA agreement, the U.S. withdrawal, renewed sanctions, asset freezes, and restrictions on oil exports reshaped its economic and security landscape. Yet the state did not collapse. Instead, it adapted. It developed parallel financial channels when access to Western banking tightened. It expanded domestic defense manufacturing because importing became unreliable. It built asymmetric capabilities rather than competing conventionally with better-funded militaries. It hardened politically because pressure became routine. Whether one agrees with Iran's policies or not, its survival under sustained sanctions has forced it to innovate. And that is precisely why this matters for Burkina Faso. This is not about Burkina Faso becoming anti-West. It is about Burkina Faso refusing to be West-dependent. There is a difference. For years, security in the Sahel operated within a Western-designed framework. French military missions like Serval and Barkhane were deployed across Mali and neighboring states. The United States established drone infrastructure in Niger. European Union missions focused on training and stabilization. Billions were spent. Strategies were drafted. Conferences were held. Yet insecurity persisted. Armed groups adapted faster than strategy manuals. Rural communities saw troop rotations but continued displacement. Borders blurred. Trust in institutions weakened. Youth populations watched promises of stabilization while violence expanded geographically. This is not ideology. It is a record of outcomes. When a security model fails to deliver consistent improvement over more than a decade, governments reassess. The coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger did not emerge in isolation. They reflected accumulated frustration with governance failures, yes, but also with externally anchored security frameworks that seemed internally fragile. Sanctions followed. Diplomatic pressure intensified. In 2023, ECOWAS even threatened force against Niger. That moment became a turning point. Instead of retreating individually, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso formed the Alliance of Sahel States (AES) under the Liptako-Gourma Charter. A mutual defense pact designed to ensure that if one member faced external aggression, the others would respond collectively. This was the real structural break. The Sahel stopped assuming its security future would be managed primarily through Western structures. It began constructing internal cohesion first. That psychological pivot matters more than any single foreign partnership. Once regional insulation strengthened, diversification became less risky. Burkina Faso was no longer negotiating as a solitary capital under pressure. It was part of a bloc. Only after that reorganization did outward diversification accelerate. That sequence is critical. Burkina Faso did not run toward Tehran out of desperation. It reorganized internally, then explored externally. The Iran conversation is not the origin of change. It is a consequence of change. Iran, for its part, is also operating strategically. Under sanctions and isolation attempts, it seeks partners in the global south. Expanding ties with Africa broadens its diplomatic footprint beyond Western containment. But recognizing Iran's interest does not mean Burkina Faso is surrendering agency. Here is the central distinction. Learning from someone's resilience does not mean inheriting their conflicts. Burkina Faso is not importing Iran's disputes with the West. It is observing how a state survives under systemic pressure. For a Sahel country navigating sanctions, diplomatic tension, and shifting alliances, that observation has practical value. This is not ideological alignment. It is strategic curiosity. In bargaining theory, leverage increases the moment you demonstrate alternative options. The goal is not to replace one dependency with another. The goal is to eliminate exclusivity. Optionality changes negotiation tone. If a state proves it has multiple doors to knock on, the old gatekeeper loses monopoly influence. But multipolarity, the existence of many power centers, is not automatically liberating. It is demanding. Today's global system is crowded. The United States remains powerful. Europe remains economically influential. China builds infrastructure networks. Russia projects military influence. Turkey exports defense technology. Gulf states expand investment. Iran widens diplomatic lanes in the global south. When only one door exists, you wait outside it. When 5 doors exist, you negotiate at all of them. That is multipolar leverage. But Africa has experienced great power rivalry before. During the Cold War, many African states became arenas for proxy competition between Washington and Moscow. It came with alignment. Security came with expectations. Sovereignty became conditional. The risk remains. If Burkina Faso diversifies carelessly, it could replace single dependency with fragmented entanglement. So how does a Sahel state extract advantage without surrendering agency? 3 guardrails are essential. First, no exclusive security pipeline. If one external actor controls training, hardware, and intelligence simultaneously, dependency reappears. Second, regional anchoring. The alliance of Sahel states must remain operational, not symbolic. Internal cohesion is the only durable counterweight to external pressure. Third, clarity of interest. Every external actor, Western or non-Western, pursues strategic advantage. Recognizing this openly prevents romantic illusions. Iran seeks diplomatic partners beyond Western isolation. That is rational. Burkina Faso seeks diversified security channels amid uncertainty. That is also rational. Danger appears only when rational calculation becomes emotional alignment. Multipolar politics rewards discipline, not symbolism. There is also a narrative battlefield unfolding. Notice how Western engagement in Africa is often described as partnership or stabilization, while engagement with Iran is framed as alignment or influence expansion. Language shapes perception before outcomes are visible. Burkina Faso understands that perception affects credit access, diplomatic recognition, and investor confidence. So expanding talks with Tehran is not only a security decision, it is a communication decision. It signals independence of choice. But narrative discipline must match strategic discipline. If diversification is framed domestically as ideological rebellion, flexibility narrows. If Western capitals interpret diversification as hostility, escalation becomes tempting. A reaction-reaction loop could form. Burkina Faso's challenge is to remain focused on outcomes, not theater. Because sovereignty is not proven in headlines. It is proven in villages. Does expanded defense cooperation improve border surveillance? Does intelligence sharing strengthen? Do armed groups lose territory? Are soldiers better equipped and better trained? Do supply chains function without political interruption? These are measurable outcomes. Signals and frameworks are not results. If diversified partnerships improve security capacity and increase diplomatic flexibility, then optionality proves its worth. If regional cohesion strengthens institutions and reduces vulnerability to coercion, sovereignty becomes structural. But if partnerships remain symbolic, if internal fragmentation deepens, Or if external actors begin shaping domestic policy direction, the cycle repeats. Multipolar engagement offers opportunity, not guarantees. Every major power pursues advantage. That is normal in international politics. What is new is African states asserting optionality so openly. For generations, Africa's security architecture was largely designed externally and implemented locally. Today, Sahel states are experimenting with reversing that flow, designing locally, negotiating externally.